Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Chasing Hope. I'm your host, Catherine, and I will be foraging through different parts of history and faith to bring you what promises to be an experience of a lifetime in all of 15 minutes. Now, when I was growing up in Western India, I was exposed to a lot of excellent literature, both regional and Western, which not just appealed to my senses with a sense of temporary pleasure, but also invoked in me a deep sense of understanding that sometimes, just sometimes, we all really need to go through an excruciatingly painful journey to make it through to the other side of peace. Take motherhood, for example. 9 months of carrying a tiny human within you, evolving with it, and then going through tormenting pain, only to forget about it in a few minutes after the baby is in your arms. What an experience! The same can be told of young adults who are exploring life in different ways, with different means. I still remember listening to my father as he tucked me in bed one night to tell me the story of a young man who belonged to an honest, upright, and God-fearing family. Now, a few years into this child's life, his father fell very, very ill. And the child prayed and prayed that God would just give him his daddy back. Soon after, however, the gentleman passed away, leaving behind his grieving widow and an emotionally underdeveloped child. The child grew rebellious and got into terrible company. Yet his mother never gave up on him, and instead she continued to pray. Now, in all of this, she gave him a Bible and asked him to read it. Instead of reading it, he flung it into the sea. Needless to say, his life was tumultuous, running from pillar to post, from prison to prison, and his life was just an absolute mess. Soon thereafter, as is with all criminals, this young man also grew weary of a life that was constantly embroiled in uncertainty and danger. He wanted answers, he felt queasy, he missed home, and he missed everything from the past. Now, one day, a dreadful thing happened. As he was fleeing a murder scene, he was caught by the cops, and immediately he was jailed. Now, it was in those prison walls where nobody could have access to him that this young boy began to think of the past. He realized how much he missed his mother, his father, the days of old, where things were slightly better than what he was in today. Now, as he was thinking about all of these things, something wonderful happened. A stranger came by and dropped him a Bible. Interestingly, this was no ordinary Bible. It was no ordinary Bible. It was the exact same Bible that he had received from his mother. The boy opened the Bible and recognized his mother's handwriting. She had marked relevant portions of the Bible for him to read. With nowhere to go, no more crimes to commit, the young man sat in prison and read this wonderful book day after day, until there came a day when he swore never to walk down that dangerous road again. The truth is, my friends, that try as we may to shape our thoughts according to the environment, and however much we try to blame other people for our failures and shortcomings, the truth is that when we make a mistake, it is ours and ours alone. It is a conscious decision that we undertake. In India, you may have noticed that sometimes when you accidentally hit a co-passenger, people ask for forgiveness of their fellow being. They touch their knee and tell them, "I'm sorry." This is to show that it was a mindless act And now I am mindfully apologizing for it. So think about it. If we are so mindful and so careful of an absolute stranger and his pain, do you not feel that we should be even more mindful about how God feels when we keep committing the same Himalayan blunder day after day? The truth is, we have of late taken the divine for granted. We only remember to run to God when we have lost everything, whether it's our time, our money, our peace of mind, our talent. We remember Him selfishly. But as soon as our work is done, we conveniently slip back and indulge in all that God expressly reminds us not to. As someone who has always believed in forgiveness as a virtue, I am compelled to ask further, do I really deserve this forgiveness myself? Because this is the core fundamental question that a Christian must ask to keep those checks and balances of faith in place. It is the knowledge that we are not worthy that keeps us humble. It is the acceptance that everything I do is still smaller than what God does for me that keeps a Christian so connected and rooted in the faith. Another story that comes to mind here is that of the popular writer John Bunyan, who is most famous for his celebrated work, The Pilgrim's Progress. Now, this particular writing, if you still haven't read it, has inspired millions across the world as one of the greatest books in the history of English literature. And the cherry on the cake? It was written in prison. The truth is that John Bunyan came from a rather troubled background, having lost most of his family before he turned a teen, only to be further enlisted in the army where he had a very tough life. Later, he found the light of truth and moved to preaching instead. The restoration of the monarchy in 1660 meant that Bunyan was warned to stop preaching, but he resolutely refused and continued until eventually he landed in prison, where he penned this beautiful book, The Pilgrim's Progress. It is in the pursuit of truth that one is convinced to remain loyal to the faith. The Pilgrim's Progress is an allegory which chronicles a beautiful story within those 12 years of John Bunyan's imprisonment. And it was only published in 1678, much after his release. Keeping the faith is quintessential in times of adversity. And it is here that a lot of people I meet ask, but why does God above give me so much trouble to go through when I already believe in Him wholeheartedly? Why must I undergo this trial, something that I did not sign up for? Well, if you carefully reflect, my friends, nowhere and in no faith has God ever said that there will be no trial. All that He said is, with every trial, there will come an answer, there will come a broader shoulder. If you believe. Now, in the two stories that I narrated to you just now, you will see one thing in common. The young boy in the first story did have faith in God, much like John Bunyan. But given the tenderness of his age and the loss of his father, the expectations and the failure to meet it, he gave up. But even Bunyan could have said, it's all right. All that they're asking me is to quit preaching. Let me just do something else. Let me go farm. Let me go do some other work. Why should I preach if I am going to court prison? Here lies the difference between the two types of faith. One person ran away from God as a child and continued running far, far away from God even as a young person until there came a time where he could not run any further. And you have the other who clung on tighter to God with every trial. No scripture claims for a happy-go-lucky life. And no scripture ever says that God promised a life with no hardships. But here's the thing. Every Christian agrees that God never leaves our hand. This is why even amidst the pandemic, you hardly feel anything terrible. The Christian faith teaches us to go a step further without romanticizing hardship, but maintaining that faith is the key to a better life. Our faith in God will allow the miracles we are waiting to see. Now, while the young boy, gave up on his faith, his mother did not. She believed that yes, God was out there, He was taking care of her son, and one day her young boy would change. And that's exactly what happened, because he had a change of heart in the middle of his life's greatest trial, the prison. So when we stand in the middle of the storm, it is at that moment, that defining time in our personal history, when we must take the stand to trust, believe, and hope. That moment can happen when you're at home, at work, or when you're simply going through a rough patch. You have to realize that God is in the silences. So today, my friend, I just want to request you one small thing. I know we've just started out, but certain things must happen at the beginning of a friendship. I don't know who you are, which religion you belong to, or if you are a Christian, which denomination you belong to. But I'd like you to sit down today, reflect on the last time you were going through a storm, and ask yourself, what brought you out of it? Was it a still small voice guiding you, reminding you that it would be okay? Or was it a person who came at a very unexpected moment to remind you that your prayers would be answered? Somewhat of a harbinger of hope. If any of this happened to you, please feel free to share your life's testimony with us, and we'll be happy to share it with the world. Now, I'll let you in on a small secret. I am deeply allergic to the word coincidence. You know why? Because so often when I see people talk, they brush off things in a very dismissive way and give all the credit for good fortune to coincidence. But talk of a small failure, and I have now lost the count of people who directly blame God. Now here's the thing. Nothing in your life is a coincidence, because it is a part of God's blueprint for you. And if you want to define your perspective as a young person, you need to see God's hand in everything. You need to see Him working on you as a miracle. You need to remember one thing, that the little challenges were not rejections, they were redirections. So, if you are struggling with your life, I'd encourage you to email. Stop doing whatever you are. Give it 2 minutes. Just fall on your knees and ask God for help. Don't look at this as any Christian activity. This is an activity of faith, of God's loving hand, which is extended to help you through another tool, another instrument in the form of me. And so, my friends, if today you've enjoyed this episode, I look forward to hearing from you on Facebook, Twitter, YouTube. Choose your forum, get in touch, and I'd be more than happy to take any questions, any prayer requests, and most importantly, if you want us to cover anything special on Chasing Hope, please write in, and we will make sure that we make space for that inclusion. Thank you so much for taking out the time, and I look forward to seeing you soon. Have a lovely week ahead.